the jungle, but he knows that every morning he wakes up, he must outrun the slowest gazelle or he will starve to death. So the lesson that you take away is you might be a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you better be running. So this is true. You can compare a lion to the biggest corporates and a gazelle to the maybe the startups. So if you are not on the ball every single day, then you would end up being consumed by somebody else. So now when the human being came into the picture, maybe human being came in a little later. We don't know when the human beings stepped into the animal kingdom. But when he did come in, he was one of the weakest animals. Neither could he move fast, nor he could kill with his paws. He didn't have the claws. So he was at a great disadvantage. And he couldn't even fight a monkey, or he couldn't even, I mean, leave alone a chimpanzee or a gorilla. But today, after so many years of coexisting, you find the biggest lions and the biggest gorillas and the biggest chimpanzees are all behind bars in the zoo. And we are the ones sitting and smiling at them. So, what's the difference between the rest of the animals and us? The fundamental difference is that we could organize ourselves. And though still we cannot fight a lion alone, but if there are 100 lions and 100 human beings, the 100 human beings would win the war against 100 lions purely because we can form a team which can eliminate the lions. So that is the fundamental thing which has happened when ever since human being landed on planet Earth. And then he was formed with, now he naturally he could conquer the planet, he could subjugate all the animals. But then there will be other challenges. The challenges never die away. So he started fighting for supremacy among himself. Like the human beings started fighting as race, as political parties, as religions. So the combat started, and each of these combat has taught us a lot of lessons. So when you fight, you tend to learn. If you are a docile person, you sit in a corner and you are content with what you have. That's not ideally the right way of doing things. So there might be advantages in doing that. Also, you might imbibe a lot of spirituality and knowledge, which you may not get when you are in combat. But if you're talking about management, the management concepts all come from combat, and it's our military training over the years. I'm not talking about the present army, the air force, or the navy. Over the years, whenever we fought a war, we have learned a lot, and the war is the price that you won't have to pay for peace. If you are good at fighting, you're good at winning, then and only then can you have peace. You can, if you look at Israel and Palestine, why is there peace? The peace will eventually come only when somebody shows that he is powerful or he is better organized and he cannot be played around with. So that is the law of nature. Like you can't, we will have a lot of emotional arguments about it, but this is the core fundamental reason why people fight and why people have, why one person needs to win, and eventually there will be a balance established. So with that premise, let's get into what can we do to win? What is the secret sauce of a winning team? So you're free to stop me. You're free to argue from this slide onwards. So it's going to be, it can be interactive, or you can reserve your questions for later. Either way, it would be helpful because the idea is to learn something from this session. So what my definition, or rather the definition which I picked up from the sources of a high performing team, is a team which will self manage. I mean, they don't require too much of coaxing and cajoling and coaching, and they'll manage even the other members of the team. They'll help each other members of the team, and they'll be motivated to do the right things. So this is a dream come true. All of you are senior managers, and you know your job would be very, very easy if you are given a high performing team. But unfortunately, and that's always a dream. It is your job to make a high performing team most of the time, and you are not given on a platter a very high performing team. So what are the things that you need to do if you're given a job of making a team? I would say the most important job is in recruitment. Many times it is considered a very what do you call it, a very simple activity or a very easy thing to do, because the budget is fixed and you just need to get a person, the job description is there, you just need to get a person and he joins the team. But if you look at an Apple or a Microsoft or any of these high performing teams, you see the amount of time that they spend on recruitment is phenomenal. Even if you look at the armed forces, we put a person through 6 days of psychometric testing, and then we put him into physical challenges, group tasks, interviews, and all these things would take us a minimum of 14 days before we actually have, I mean, not to mention the medical tests and things like that. But that is the amount of time that we spend to choose an officer for the armed forces. But how much time do we take in a corporate to recruit a person? I don't think we take more than a couple of hours or 3 hours. So that is a very big difference. And I think that's one thing which needs to change. And recruiting the right person to the team is 50% of your goal is satisfied. Like you've achieved 50% of your goal when the right person joins your team. Now, the second question is, I mean, these are the topics that we're going to discuss in great length. And I think we are missing a point, especially with regard to ULTS. I would say that we need to really think. This is not, I told you, this is not just a concept lecture. This is about, we are trying to discuss how can we change things in ULTS. And that is going to be the, what do you call it, the common thread which is going to run through all my slides. So the second question is, who sets the culture in the team? So it is not going to be a CEO who sets the culture, or it's not going to be a senior executive or the SLT members who are going to set the culture in the team. Those who are going to set the culture in the team are going to be the people who interact with the working population. That is going to be the immediate supervisors. They're going to be the senior managers or maybe even a middle level manager. He is the one who is going to set the culture. I do understand that there has to be the culture has to be whatever you are trying to set should have been imbibed by the senior management also. They should also change the way they function if required. I'm not saying that is mandatory, but the essential most important thing is the senior management or the middle level management to set the culture, because you are the ones who are going to interact with the programmer who's doing the coding. You're going to deal with the sales team, you're going to deal with the procurement team, and the kind of cooperative culture, the collaboration culture which you set, or rather, like, I am here for you and I'm going to back you up, and I'm going to stand up for you. I'm going to I really believe in employee wellness. That kind of a tone can only be set by somebody who is managing things on the ground. Like we say in the Air Force, the air chief is not going to is not going to win a war. It's going to be won by the soldiers in the field. The chief of army staff is not going to win a war. He's only is a strategic thinker. Like he may be managing the politicians, he might be managing the adversaries, he might be on a hotline to many other countries. But who is going to win the war is going to be the guys on the field. And there, the platoon commander, the squadron commanders, they are the ones who are going to set the culture of winning. Next, let's also have a look at, does the team understand your communication? You're trying to say that, okay, this is my objective, I want to win this hill, or I want to finish this product, I want to finish a KLA product in a particular time. So if you are going to tell him what he is supposed to do and how he is supposed to do it, he may not really connect with the urgency that you are trying to present, because you are only appealing to a rational side of his brain. Because every human being has got a limbic brain and a frontal cortex brain, which functions very differently. But if you can tell him why he needs to do it and why it is so very important for our survival, or we'll be consumed by somebody else, or we're going to get killed, And he has to understand, he has to feel it. And that feeling is something which we as managers can bring about, provided we ourselves know why we are doing the task. So the what and how is not as important, because maybe a guy, technical guy like an Ijaz, I don't have to tell him what is to be done in a KL or how it is to be done, because he's got phenomenal amount of technical experience. But if me and Ijaz can connect on a why, and then he can further pass it down to somebody in his team, and that is going to make a very big difference in any team. I'm just taking one example. So I think that is something which we need to inculcate in all our managers and supervise very closely. We have our vision, mission, and all those things are there, but that feeling is not something which you can convey in a PowerPoint slide. This feeling is something which will come with constant communication, and every single activity that the manager performs and every single interaction that you have with your team is going to communicate why. And however much you might say that your vision is to be an accelerator of and to truly what do you call it, achieve the digital transformation goals, but that wouldn't make much sense to the person unless you do it in every interaction that you have with your employees. You need to connect to them and tell them that this is how I intend to achieve that vision. So let's come to, and before we conclude the whole thing, we would also take a look at how do you manage toxicity in the team. I mean, there will always be a group which will be backbiting, gossips, rumors, or there might be very productive conflicts also. I mean, there are two kinds of conflicts. One is which is very unproductive, and something which is very productive. So we'll look at both these things and how do we manage. So the takeaway from this slide is, when you function as a team lead, your main responsibility is to develop a culture in the team which can create a sense of ownership among the people who are working with you. So they should be driving it, and you should be the one who is facilitating the whole process. And I think that would be the secret sauce of any winning team. So you see this picture on the slide. This is a very old sport in most parts of India, especially during Janmashtami. And this is a sport which has really fascinated me. I never miss a chance when I was posted in Bombay and Nasik. I used to always go and watch this because this has got a lot of lessons. Okay. It is not as simple as you think it is, because there are three very important questions being asked in this sport. The people are supposed to climb on each other's shoulder, and they are supposed to reach at a very I mean, it's a very big height that he's supposed to reach and grab his goal. So everybody knows what the goal is. But the one guy who is at the real top, he's the one who is going to take both the danger and all the accolades. Because in tomorrow's newspaper, you wouldn't find anybody who is right at the bottom. These guys are not going to come in tomorrow's newspaper pictures. This is the guy who is going to come in the picture tomorrow. But he's also, if he's going to have the fall, he's going to have the biggest fall. So in this case, do you really trust your team to take this risk? Do you respect the guys on whose shoulders you're standing? So that respect is again what I said, that's part of the culture. Then that cultural respect happens with every interaction that you do with the team. Every time you talk to them, every time you have any kind of an interaction, it might be an evaluation, an interaction, whatever. Do you really respect the guy below? It is going to show. And for the guy right at the bottom, what is it that he is doing this for? I told you, he's not going to get any credit. At least not the kind of mass hysteria which this guy is going to enjoy. But these guys are collaborating for a reason, that they want to beat the other team. So an external competition is being overcome by an internal collaboration. So if you can build that kind of a collaborative spirit, which this team is able to do, it can really work wonders. So now coming to a concept, I've tried to make it as lucid as possible. This is a simplest way in which you can define an organization. There'll be two kinds of teams. One is the management team, which is somebody who was in the execution team, and it has to be somebody who was in the execution team earlier. Those who have shifted to management, so he knows exactly what the execution is all about. But this team will be more of a strategic role. They would be making all the decisions, which would facilitate the execution team, which would consist of the delivery team, the procurement, the finance, the sales, everybody. I would put them into the execution team. But yes, there will also be some specialist teams who have to help these in the execution. That is the quality improvement guys, the training guys, which is very important. Because we need to keep it updated, the information that people have, and somebody who does a lot of coordination. The project coordination is very, very important, which I think is sadly lacking in our company even today. The information flow between the teams have to be facilitated by a very efficient coordination team. So in GIS, especially, I put almost 3 people on purely controlling this, because we have around 10 teams working in different projects at all times, but they which share resources. And so 3 of my smartest people are put into this particular activity, and they make my job very much easier. In fact, I have to just sit and watch how they coordinate, and they ensure that the entire all these teams function in synergy and without much of conflict. So we also need a subject matter expert who can work with different teams and give us, because this knowledge is something which we need to get from outside, and we can contribute to all the teams. So the takeaway from this slide is people can perform well when they work in a group than when they are divided into specialized tasks. So this is something which we start when from the first time that Henry Ford started making cars in his factory. This is something which he came up with as a management theory. Because in olden days, when, as I said, the management has its genesis in combat and military enterprise and military, uh, what do you call it, projects that we did by going across the border and trying to capture land, in which it was mostly not a very specialized task in those days. People used to just march and capture land, and they used to get killed and maimed, and they used to have a terrible time. But at the end of the day, somebody who is numerically superior used to win. But all that has changed now. You see the way of war is being fought in the Middle East. It's a real revelation. You don't have need the numerical superiority to win. You just need to organize yourself better. You just need to be clever, and you need to be having specialized people functioning in tasks, which is certainly the reason why one person lost only a few people, or rather not a single soldier lost from Israel, whereas Palestinians lost around 300 people. So that is the kind of, it doesn't come because of numbers, it comes because of better teamwork. So on every single war, if you follow it properly, you will find a very good example of management. And similar, the corporates had taken over this particular concept of how to manage as a team. When Ford started his, what do you call it, floor management, factory floor management, and then it went to lean management, which is a Japanese concept. They brought in that you can still improve the process by better supervision, and you can increase both the quality and quantity of your deliverable, because the Japanese were producing cars in tons when Americans could produce only few, and the Russians could produce even less. So there's a lot of experimentation which has happened in this, and we've at maybe in another 10 years time we would be looking at humans working with robots, and there will be HR, somebody like a Prasita making a charter as to how should you behave with robots, or maybe how should a robot behave with another robot. So that is the kind of evolution that will happen. Let's hope that we don't see it in our lifetime. But it's much easier to deal with human beings still. So at least you're dealing with a known quantity. So we'll go to the next one. Any questions so far you would like to stop and ask, or shall I continue? Anybody?
I think we can continue and take the questions at the end.
Yeah, okay. So, when you talk about an organization, it is just a team which is a conglomerate of many teams. We have amalgamated many teams. It's a series of teams. So, we need to know that every team has got an input and an output, and you got your customers and you got your suppliers. So, you might be somebody like a Rahul sitting in the procurement team, and Rahul has got a set of customers, which is me, and he's got a set of suppliers, which is somebody from outside. So it is very important that the team knows these things. Maybe you might be in a project like a very big project like a KLA, and you might be doing a particular module. But then again, you are dependent on certain other people, and you are obliged to certain other people to provide your services. So if you know the SIPCO process, that is, who is your supplier, what is the input that you're going to get, what is the process, what are the process boundaries. We'll get into it a little more a little later. And who's your end customer? If you're saying that your job is the customer's delight, then if you know your job, then and if you can delight your customer with the output that he's been asking for, that saves a lot of trouble in the entire organization. So what I'm trying to stress is it depends on each manager in the company, how the company really works. A senior management like an SLT or a CEO is not the ones who are going to really bring in a change. The change starts with these managers, and if they are really conscious of what is their dharma, then they will plan their karma accordingly, and that is going to really change things. What feedback do we receive from that customer? And that is very important. Every time you do a transaction, you have to have a record as to what was your the feedback that you received, and what is your learning from that particular transaction. It might be just getting one particular piece for an automobile, or in the case of a software, it might be just buying a software, or you might be just buying a service. But then that entire process, what did you learn from it, and how are we going to improve next time? If you don't improve, then it's then if there is no learning, that is when you become a very static team, and you start to go on the road down the cliff. But if you want to climb, you need to be a fast learner. Otherwise, you'll be on a constant slide. So now, as in the senior executive team, there can be problems in this. Now, how do you assign responsibilities to all these managers? This is a senior strategic function, but then many times you find that there are overlapping responsibilities. The responsibilities are not very clear, and this is the one sure recipe for failure. Because people might think that, okay, I've given responsibility to two people and they should be able to work better. Like a Prasita is helping a Lynette, and a Lynette is helping a Prasita. It will never work that way, because this is not called collaboration, this is called confusion. So overlapping responsibilities, avoiding it, and making it very, very clear what is a person's responsibility is the cornerstone for success in every team. Like if a goalkeeper thinks that he should also go and strike the goal, and you give him the responsibility whenever you feel that the other team is not attacking, why don't you just take the ball and go to the next goal post? If that's going to happen, you are going to be in for surprises, and you're taking a very big risk. What should be the size of a team? Now, it depends on the nature of the game that you're going to play. So there's no ideal size, but for kind of convenience, we can say that something like a 15-member team is the max that a person can manage as a manager, because otherwise you would lose touch, you would lose contact with your people. You wouldn't be able to inculcate the culture that we were talking about. And if it is too few, then a manager is also not required, because less than five, a team doesn't really require management. They should be actually merged with other teams. So the management principle really works well when you give a manager more than five people and less than 15 people. This is purely from the social experiments which have been done in various companies. This is the learning which has come into the books of management. But yes, if you can't help it, you want, because that's why you don't see a game which is being played by three people. It's very, very, you might play it alone, but if it's a group game, then it's usually 5, or it can go up to 11, or a little more than that with all the substitutes that you're going to put into the game. So this is something which, if you see sports, you will see this is also very. And there might be, I don't know, there might be a game with 3 people. I'm not aware of it. Since I'm not aware of it, I'm saying that it doesn't exist. How many skills can a team member learn? It is always nice to have all the people in your team as good all rounders, high performing all rounders, but then that's not possible. So you should maybe have one or two. Like you have a cricket team, it's a very good example. How many all rounders can you have? Maybe a one, max two, a quality all rounder. But then having more than that would be compromising on the kind of expertise that you require. So you might require a pure batsman, a pure bowler, a pure and maybe a pure wicket keeper. So those kind of things are some things which we know, but maybe we don't really notice when we watch. But these are all management techniques. So now let's come to something a little core to how do you convey to your team what exactly are your principles, your process, and your essential ways. I mean, how will you function? So for that, we have something which is very well laid out. It's called a team charter. Though it is something which is we take it very lightly when we start a project. Um, this is something which is very essential. You have to have a contract between your team and the leadership team, as well as the customers and the clients. Just like you have with customers and clients, it's very important that within your team, like I made some rules for my team that they have to be available at 9 o'clock for a team call. And if a person is not able to make it at 9 o'clock, I have spelled out 3 ways in which he can communicate to me. And what are his obligations if he is not able to make it? He has to send the next senior most person in his team to attend my call. So this is something I don't want any ambiguity in that. And if a person violates that principle, I also don't bat an eyelid. I send in a warning the very next minute. The very next minute, I have kept the the template ready, so that there is absolutely no discretion applied here as to whether he is the best worker in the team. I mean, in the organization, or the not so good worker in the organization, or whether he is a very senior person in the organization or the junior most in the organization. If somebody violates the charter, there is no exceptions to the charter. And it does cause a lot of bad blood in the beginning, but over a period of time, people would start respecting it. Yes, I asked for trouble, I got it, and I wouldn't do it again. And as a manager also, you need to be very matter of fact about it. Okay, he made a mistake, he paid for it, and then we move on. We don't keep that in mind and then start assessing him purely based on, no, he didn't come for my meeting that day. So the charter really helps in making your charter, sticking to the charter. And it applies to you also. Like you are not able to make, or you got up late one day, you go into the meeting and own up, yes, I slept, I made a mistake, and I am liable for a warning. But you don't say that when you are late, you don't blame it on the traffic, and when the other people are late, you don't blame it on their laziness. That won't work. So if you are ready to take, own up, you guys are ready to stand up and say that, see, I violated the charter and I'm really sorry. And I wouldn't do it again. So that is something which the team mostly does appreciate. Like I can tell you this very interesting thing about somebody was doing a newspaper clipping about the squadron in the Air Force. So when he came for the meeting, um, I was late for that meeting. So I told him, see, usually we are not late for these kind of meetings. When we give a time, we are almost there, we are there. And since we are, as a principle, the Air Force officers are never supposed to be late for any meeting. In fact, if you're not 5 minutes early for the meeting, then you're considered late. So that's the kind of punctuality which is to be followed. So, but I tried to explain to the newspaper reporter that yes, this is something which was very personal and very important, very critical. So he was asking me what happened. So I said we had to get dismiss a guy from service, and he was trying to put his points across as to why he shouldn't be dismissed from service. And but we have our rules, and we had to stick to it. So he asked me what was the reason that he was being thrown out of service. So the thing is, he was caught sleeping on the guard duty. He was a very junior rank, maybe he was of a Jawan rank. So the reporter suddenly asked me, "Don't you think that it is very harsh to send a person out of and he'll lose a job just because he fell asleep?" So then I was trying to explain to him, so this person, when he was caught sleeping, he was asked, why did it happen? So in the first instance, he tried to prove that he never slept and the other person who caught him is lying. Okay, then we went through the entire process of trying to establish that he actually slept on the guard. And that is a very, I mean, you are supposed to be guarding so that you save lives. And if you're sleeping on guard, you are actually compromising lives. That's the way we look at it when we are in combat. Now, if a person had lied, if he had not lied, if he had admitted that, yes, I slept and I'm really sorry about it. There are so many people who are caught sleeping, but not all of them lose jobs. And the management takes a very different view, though you will have to certainly go through the punishment. Punishment is going to be as per the charter. But if you are dismissed, that means you have not only violated the charter, but you have violated trust. And trust is not something which can be violated and it cannot be really pardoned. So that's how important a charter is, and that's how a management evolves with transparency. And then it is applicable to everybody. So that's a kind of importance of a shared agreement. So this is something which I really did talk about in brief. I did touch upon it, that when you're in a team, you should have a statement of purpose, which the fundamental thing about this purpose is: do you know what's happening? Do you know whom you're dealing with? Do you know your job? Do you know your responsibilities? Do you know your boundaries? Do you know what kind of communication responsibilities you have, and what are the principles on which you are planning to do this job? So this is called the SIPOC, in which this is very famous even in the armed forces, which when we take over any job, we are supposed to make this as to whom are you dependent on, whom are you obliged to, what is the kind of expectations people have both ways. So once you define this, then we stick to it. Another interesting thing about team development is you've all gone through team formation because you've been part of multiple projects. So this is something which you would be very familiar with: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. That is the closing down of the project on a happy note or or a sad note, whatever. But find everything, like the definition of a project is that it is a task which is to be completed in a definite period of time. So it has got a starting and it's got an ending. Yeah, otherwise, it is not called a project. Anything which doesn't end is never can be termed as a project. So a good project manager really knows how to control it all through this period of time. So when I started here in ULTS, we had a very small team, and when I stepped in here, it was uh, kind of a cultural shock also for me, because people used to behave in a very different way. And slowly we had to form a team which can really perform. Like, we had only 20 people in the GIS team, and they were doing very small projects. Like, you wouldn't believe it, the entire turnout for the year was only around 50 lakhs. So if you look at 2017, the only project that we did was one IPMS project in Talasheri. And that project carried on for the whole entire year. And the entire 20 people were just working on this one project. So I knew that this is something fundamentally wrong with the entire team. We need to form a team where first the culture has to be set, the confidence level has to be high. So when I used to talk to each person in the team, first is there was a lot of resistance because people didn't like me talking in English in a team meeting. But slowly they understood that they are also gaining out of it. Like, they are also be able to, they were trying to communicate to me, though I am very good at Malayalam. I still thought it is, I have to put some challenges for them, that they need to start understanding what I'm trying to say. And they also still start, it's only for learning purpose. It's not to humiliate them or it's not to show them down. So I started telling them, see, if you can communicate perfectly in Malayalam and tell me exactly what your thing is, I would appreciate that. But if you're not able to communicate in any language, what exactly is the purpose of what you are doing, then you got a real problem. Then I started recruiting people who are intrinsically smart. And those people are made a huge difference in the way the rest of the team works. Like there is one girl, Fatima, who came for the interview. And you know what she said? When I asked her, do you know GIS? She said, no, I've never heard of it. So I said, but you have applied for a GIS job. She said, because there was nothing else open here. And that's why I applied for it. But she's an MTech in environmental engineering. I said, good. I mean, you saved a lot of time. Me asking you questions about GIS, you beating around the bush. And I knew that that's the kind of confidence I want in the team. A person who can stand up and say, I don't know, but I'm ready to learn. And I immediately told her that, yes, you're selected and you will be joining. And she made a lot of difference in the way the team functions and many others. And I'm just taking one example. So it's not always the technical expertise which is going to really help you form a good team. You need all kinds of people who are going to do various different kinds of roles in the team. So you might have the best of technical people, but you might have not a single leader might emerge out of that team. And that is going to be very difficult in making the team perform. So initially, when these people came in, like Fatima came in, the Jismol came in, and the Jodi came in, there was a lot of storming which was happening because the older lot thought that these guys are not good for nothing. The newbies need to be put to task because they're going to take away our jobs, and we are not going to cooperate with them. And slowly, these smart people who joined, they started showing them that I can help you do your task even better. So that is a knowledge transfer. When a letter is to be made, Fatima is to jump in and say that, okay, I will write it for you. I will do it in excellent English, and I have got that ability. So let me do it for you. And they never used to come and take credit for any of these things. And though I know exactly what's happening, but that's the way you have to facilitate a norming process in which and you win the trust of the person who is maybe not as capable, but he is ready to learn. He is ready to learn once you the psychology is changed. You can counsel him through your actions. That I want to take you along. I'm not here to just dispose you and run. I'm not. This company is not going to run with only the smartest people in the world. It's going to run with even the most average people or below average people. Everybody is required, provided you all show the, I wouldn't say humility, but the keenness to learn. And then you can slowly, you see that performance peaking. From one project, you go to 10 projects, you go to 15 projects, 20 projects, and then you start winning. And once you start winning, the team dynamics is totally different. Now, I would say you're totally jobless after that because the team starts taking over and they come up with bigger targets. And they say that, no, this is not the way you put a higher target. I want to achieve that. And we want to win even more because winning is like drug addiction. I'm telling you, once you start winning and once you start tasting success, then it's like he can't do without success. So it's only a point of taking a person till success and telling him this is what you would taste. Do you want it again? He would jump for it. He would say that, "No, why not?" So another very important thing in all team meetings is have a very good agenda. Many of the times we go in for meetings without an agenda. We need to start with what are the updates from the last meeting? What is the big picture that you are trying to convey? What are your priorities? What are the roadblocks? What are your shout outs for help? And what are your action items? So this needs an MOM, minutes of the meeting is very, very much required. Otherwise, you can talk endlessly. You don't, that solely shows that you're not respecting other people's time, and you are wasting your time and their time. And when you're wasting a manager's time, you're actually wasting a team's time because a team has got fixed working hours. Now the manager is not able to spend as much time with the team. So a team meeting has to be within the specified limits of time, and it has to be driven with specific agenda, and it has to be like a drill. And I would say it should be like a parade which is conducted. And if you do it with that kind of a discipline, you would see that a lot of things will change, because people would start respecting time, and neither would you be wasting their time, nor they would be wasting your time with unnecessary things. So this is one template which is very much recognized, and but this is too much of a minute planning, but this would really help. If you're saying that I'm going to have a 30-minute meeting in which the facilitator and everybody else pitches in and says that these are the action items, this is the amount of time that we are going to spend on each of these items, and we need to be out in 30 minutes. So like most companies follow this in their stand-up meeting is even with the CEO, he's never spends more than 30 minutes with anybody, because that means we would be eating into productive time. So this is very important, which you can practice as a senior manager itself. I think people would start appreciating it. And you need to document things really well. Documentation, documentation, documentation. I couldn't stress it more. And this is very important for any kind of follow-up. Your decisions, your actions, who should do it, when they should do it, what is the program date, I mean, planned date of completion, the PDC. Once it is there, I'm telling you, things will start falling in place, because you have got proof, you've got ample amount of what do you call it, archive data, which you can delve into at any point in time, and it will be a good knowledge base for even other teams to function. Like I saw somebody in Kollam, like they were doing excellent documentation. So the kind of quality of documentation was so good that I told all the other project managers, please look into it and see how he's able to do it so well. And it so happened that he had a very smart girl with him, who was doing the whole stuff, and she was doing it in such a very professional manner, which I couldn't conceive myself. I wouldn't have been able to do such a good job. So that became our template for all kinds of minutes of meetings. And so I'm saying most of the solutions don't come from the leader. The leader may not be as technically competent, may not be as efficient in any of these activities. Your only job is to facilitate people who are really good under you. Just like I told you about the Dehi Handi, the guy who is climbing on top, he might be climbing on top because he is the scrawniest guy, so that his weight is the least. That is the reason why he is able to climb. But certainly it depends on people standing below and the shoulders that he is standing on, whether his life depends on that. So you get guys with good shoulders, good strong guys to stand under you, and you trust them and you respect them. That will change a lot of things which are going to happen in that organization. So we are coming to a very touchy topic, in which I will start with Socrates. He said, I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them people think. Okay, so there is some activity which happens in every toxic team. Like when you come with a very, what do you call it, conservative culture. I wouldn't say conservative culture, very retrogressive culture of gossips, rumors, backbiting, because this is a kind of entertainment which happens in every team. And the surprising fact is, though we always say women gossip more, the reality is men gossip way more than any women. So it's a national art. I mean, not saying that I am not part of it. Everybody is part of it. But every time you do that in a team, you need to be very aware of certain things, that you are really affecting the productivity of a team by loose talk. So one good thing which Socrates found out is, when somebody comes and tries to tell you something about somebody else, like it could be some it would be something very juicy gossip. So what he is to ask the person before he tells him anything is it actually true? What you are telling me, are you 100% sure that what you are trying to tell me is the truth? So naturally, the other person would say, "No, I haven't gone into the depth of it and analyzed, but yes, this is what everybody says, and I have no reasons to disbelieve." Or that is the maximum that he would come to, because he has no proof in his hand. Okay, he is just saying it for the juicy gossip part of it. So the second question you need to ask is it good for me? Sorry, is it good about, are you saying something good about the person or bad about the person? So naturally, most of the juicy gossip is bad. And like nobody is going to spend his time and energy gossiping something good about somebody else. So this is called the triple filter test, which most of the corporates in US, they have put it on their board, saying that please, when somebody comes and complains or tries to spread gossip, please ask them these three things. And the third and most important thing is, what you are trying to tell me about the other person, is it going to be something useful for me? Am I going to benefit out of it? So most in 99% of the cases, there's nothing you can benefit out of it. This is pure entertainment. So now as managers, if you tell people to abstain from this kind of an activity, it is going to really improve your productivity, because this is part of corporate bullying. And you would find people in, if you look around an open office like ULTS also, you can always find some one odd guy who would be going from one table to another table, and from that table to a third table, and his only job is spreading stories. And he has become an expert. He would have picked up the story from the first table, and he's only spreading it to the second and third table. So as a good manager, you need to control this particular guy. You need to get him out of the system if you want to have a healthy work environment. Because in a corporate environment, all that works, all that is important is your goal. What is your goal? Your goal is not going to run anybody's private life. Your goal is to run the task for which you are getting your salaries. So another very important thing is, these are all from management textbooks. So that's, it's not nothing which I have found out. All these are proven principles of management right from the 60s, when the first books on management came out. So this is called the dreaded drama triangle. So when a persecutor, like you are a manager, you are rebuking a person or scolding a person, maybe as per well within your limits. Okay, so the person feels like he is a victim. What does the victim do? The victim can always come and tell you that this is what, and you can clear the air with you, but usually it never happens. The victim will run to a person called a rescuer. Okay, what does the rescuer do? Rescuer has absolutely no job in this entire resolution of this problem. But a rescuer is somebody who wants to just enjoy the uh, enjoy the victim's pain, because he is very happy that, okay, I am so happy that it didn't happen to me. But he would always reinforce the victim's pain by telling him that, yes, what happened to you is really wrong. I don't think that that should have ever happened. And I think this is the way you should act. And this is the way you should really escalate things. So this is the drama triangle, the DDT, which is found out by Steve Krapman. Uh, I'm not getting the pronunciation right. I think it is something very close to that. So this is again something, as a managers, if we are aware of it, and you know who is playing the victim, who plays the rescuer on a regular basis. There are people who play rescuer as a profession. So these people also need to be told that enough is enough, and we need to ensure that he is weeded out of such systems. So conflicts can occur because of various things. And I'm not going into the depth of conflicts. I'm just saying that we need to be aware of the different kinds of conflict. Conflict management is a different topic in itself. And before we get into different types of conflict, I want to tell you, conflicts are not always bad, but because a lot of friction always creates traction. Like in the case of you take the friction in an automobile tire. Why are you putting all those grooves and creating friction? Because only when there is friction, there will be traction. So conflict, you don't have to always diffuse a conflict. You can get into a conflict, because if it's a very productive conflict, there's always something which somebody is trying to say. Maybe he's really right. The other person may be powerful. He might be telling him, no, I don't agree. And that could be the reason for the conflict. But if you really try to hear both sides out, there is a lot of useful information which can come out of conflict. So if there is no conflict within a team, that means it is a danger sign. I mean, if people seem to be working in absolute harmony, that means nobody is even thinking. So that's not a good sign. But at the same time, there can be conflicts which are counterproductive, like relationship conflicts, which is purely based on personal biases, which of course you need, there's nothing useful which might come out of it. But as a manager, you can always step in, never escalate it, never enhance it, never take sides, but you try to resolve it amicably and make them talk and resolve it. There could be task conflicts, which is purely the inefficiency of the management of the manager. That again is something which you can look into it and you can resolve it. Process conflicts, yes, it does happen in every single team. Um, so this is again something which is linked to task and relationship conflict, and that is why the process conflict is happening. So if you can work out the task and relationship conflicts, usually most of the cases the process conflict also goes away. Similarly, we have status conflicts. Who is bigger than who? I mean, you are one among equals, or you are the best among equals. All that kind of status conflict comes in again, which if you have a good charter, which really gives the hierarchy, it really helps. That's because I'm always worked for 25, I mean, almost quarter of a century in a very hierarchical organization. I think if the hierarchy is well defined, it helps in managing most of the teams, except maybe very high performance teams like a Google. Maybe you don't require a hierarchy, but then you need to know that a flat organization works only in very mature teams. So you're trying to introduce a flat organization in a highly immature team might be very counterproductive. So similarly, you will have conflicts emerging from organizational structure as a whole, often tied to lack of communication, absence of shared visions. And so these are all things which can be, which you can, any conflict that you see in the team usually would fall into one of these five silos. And I'm sure you would be able to sort it out after that. Now, as a manager, what is your task? Most of the task is being done by your subordinates. Your task is to mostly find out what is urgent and what is important. So both are equally, have equal kind of ramifications. Something which looks very urgent may not be very important, but because your boss wants it done, you are running after it. And what is urgent is seldom very important. But what I'm trying to say is what is important is like building a team culture, which is very important. We're getting them to focus on the goals. It doesn't look very urgent, but then that is the most important job that you are supposed to do. Whatever is urgent can always wait. I mean, usually the urgency is artificially fabricated. There is no real urgency. Just because your boss's boss wants something done, the boss is in a hurry to get it done. So if you really delve into the urgency, you will find that there was no real reason to do it today. But that as a manager, you need to really take the call and you need to stand up and make your point of view very clear that I don't think it needs to be done today. Maybe we can do it tomorrow because I'm doing something very important today, which if it is not done, it is going to affect my employees' well-being, or if my employees are not, will be stressed out. So something like, one second, I'm just getting a call. Yeah, okay. Let me just put this on mute. Okay, sorry. So to summarize the whole thing, that how a team dynamics works, I think this one slide would help you understand a lot of things about the shared cognition, how the roles and requirements of individuals gel with the individual characteristics, gel with the team characteristics and the task characteristics and the work structure, which is the net outcome is the expectations from the team, and how you are able to deliver the goods through a continuous team leadership, coaching, communication, interpersonal relationship, coordination, and other aspects. So this is just a summary of all that we discussed. All these things do matter. And now I want to show you something like how do you build a very good team? Like you coming together, like I said, at the forming stage, staying together is you can make process, and working together is success. But like I started this presentation, you need to have a lot of fun. If you don't have fun, and you're as a manager, you cannot ensure fun in your team, then nobody is going to like working for you. So it's my constant endeavor to ensure that when I came in, people said, we don't have dance parties, we don't go out and dine together, we don't go and booze together. They do it in small groups, but that's not the idea. Can the entire team go out? Can the team really contribute towards a big celebration? Can they really stick together for each other? And then can they really enjoy together? It's not about four people going out, it's not a team dinner or a team lunch. That's only going to create more friction within the team. But if the entire team can celebrate together, and we can see in the picture, it's not just the GIS team. We had participants from all over. You can see a Shaibu dancing and the Tony dancing, and so that creates a kind of relationship between our team and the other teams, which will carry on. And this is something which I really want you to take a look at. After the entire celebration, there was this girl who, this again happens to be Fatima, who took the broom and started cleaning up the whole place. And seeing her do that, every single member of that people who were in that party started cleaning up the place. And we had left it spick and span, though it was office space. When the Chechis came the next day, they were really shocked to see that there was absolutely nothing. It was like they left it the day before. So they had no cleaning to do, though it was a total mess with all the balloons running around. So they spent that last 1 hour cleaning up the whole place. So I think that kind of a culture, once it is embedded, it can really work wonders. So thank you for your listening, and I'm really happy to say that I've finished my part of the lecture, so we can open it up for discussion. Over to you, Prasida.
Yeah. So I think now any questions from participants? Any particular situation that you would like to highlight, or
Of course, I hope it was a wonderful journey and walkthrough that the Jagji has been presented as of now, and it was a thoughtful and so many input was there to accommodate and to implement within the organization as well as within the team. So here our basic things as well as our main constraint is that interdepartmental communication gap. So that is a main factor, and there is a main hurdles on that. So based on your suggestions, how come we could able to improve and mitigate those gaps